What would you do if you found out that the very person who took a vow to love you and only you ended up betraying you and everyone told you to forgive them and pray harder? This story will make you furious. You'll scream at your screen. But please, watch until the very end. Trust me, it's worth it. The Cartier bracelet felt like a shackle around Elizabeth Harper's wrist. She stood in the powder room of Grace Haven Church, staring at her reflection in the gilded mirror. Her makeup was flawless, foundation smoothed to perfection, lips painted a demure rose. Her cream silk dress whispered elegance with every breath. Her hair fell in soft waves from her weekly blowout, each strand precisely placed. Everything about her looked exactly as it should for the wife of Grace Haven's senior pastor. Everything except her hands. They trembled as she gripped the edge of the marble sink. In her Hermès purse, the one Daniel had given her for their 5th anniversary, back when he still pretended to care, was a crumpled hotel receipt. The Mandarin Oriental, presidential suite, 2 guests, last Tuesday night, 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. Champagne, $850. In-room dining for 2, $340. Rose petal turn-down service, $200. The same night, Daniel had texted her at 8:47 p.m. Emergency counseling session running late. Don't wait up. Love you. Elizabeth's stomach turned. A knock on the door made her jump. Elizabeth? Service is starting in 5 minutes. Pastor Daniel is asking for you, dear. Of course he was. Elizabeth forced a smile onto her face, the one she'd perfected over 7 years of marriage, the one that never quite reached her eyes anymore, and opened the door. Sister Monica stood waiting, dripping in pearls and judgment. You look lovely. That dress is beautiful. Thank you, Elizabeth whispered. She followed Sister Monica down the hallway, past oil paintings of Grace Haven's founding pastors, past Persian runners that cost more than most families' annual income. The sounds of worship grew louder, the Steinway grand piano, the professional choir, voices lifted in perfect harmony. Grace Haven Church wasn't just a church, it was an empire. 15,000 members, a television ministry broadcast to 43 countries, annual revenue in the tens of millions, and Daniel Harper, her husband, her love, her entire world, ruled it all with the charisma of a Kennedy and the business acumen of a Fortune 500 CEO. Elizabeth took her place on the platform beside Daniel's empty chair. The congregation was a sea of designer suits and dresses, executives, entrepreneurs, old money and new. People who came to Grace Haven for salvation and connections in equal measure. Daniel emerged from the wings, and the congregation erupted in applause. He was magnificent, 6'2", with silver touching his temples just enough to look distinguished. His custom suit fit him perfectly, Brioni, tailored in Milan last month. His Patek Philippe watch caught the stage lights as he raised his hands. His smile could have melted ice. He reached for Elizabeth's hand as he passed her. This gesture the congregation loved, this display of marital unity, and she let him take it. His palm was warm, possessive. The 5-carat diamond on her finger pressed into her skin, a weight she'd carried for 7 years. Daniel began to preach, his voice filling every corner of the sanctuary. Marriage, he proclaimed, his voice rising with passion, is a covenant, not a contract, but a sacred bond before God Almighty. When we say, I do, we make a promise to be faithful, to be present, to forsake all others. The congregation murmured, Amen. Elizabeth sat perfectly still, her designer handbag in her lap, her Louboutin heels crossed at the ankle, her face a mask of serenity. Inside, she was dying. Infidelity, Daniel's voice thundered. It doesn't just break a marriage, it shatters the very foundation of trust that God designed. The enemy uses adultery to destroy families, to demolish ministries, to make a mockery of everything holy. A woman in the front row was crying now, moved by his passionate defense of marital faithfulness. Elizabeth wanted to scream. She wanted to stand up and tell them all the truth, that the man preaching about covenant had spent Tuesday night in a hotel suite with champagne and rose petals, that the prophet of faithfulness came home smelling of perfume that wasn't hers. But she sat still and silent, the perfect pastor's wife, while her husband's hypocrisy echoed off the walls. Her phone buzzed silently in her purse. Elizabeth glanced down, keeping her expression neutral. A text from Daniel's number. "Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. When can I see you again?" Then another. "I'm wearing the lingerie you bought me under my choir robe. Just for you, Pastor." Elizabeth's vision blurred. These weren't messages to Daniel. These were messages from his phone, sent accidentally to her number, instead of whoever she was. Her hands began to shake so violently she had to clasp them together. When the service finally ended, after the altar call, after the announcements, after Daniel had embraced every important person seeking his blessing, he turned to her with that practiced smile. "Ready, darling?" His hand settled on the small of her back as he guided her through the private exit to where their Mercedes S-Class waited. Marcus, their driver, opened her door without a word, his face carefully neutral. In the car, alone for the first time, Daniel's smile dropped. He pulled out his iPhone and began scrolling, his jaw tight. "The Caldwells want us for dinner next Friday. I accepted. Wear the red Valentino." Not a request, a command. "Daniel," Elizabeth's voice was barely a whisper, "I got some strange texts from your phone this morning." He didn't even look up. "Oh? Probably the church group chat. You know how Sister Janet is with her prayer requests." These weren't prayer requests. Now he looked at her, and something flickered in his eyes. Calculation. What did they say? Things about lingerie and last night being incredible. Daniel's laugh was smooth, practiced. "Elizabeth, come on. Obviously spam. You know how these bots work. They hack phone numbers, send random messages. I'll have IT look into it." "But they mentioned being in the choir." "Honey," his voice took on that gentle, condescending tone. "You're tired. You've been working so hard with the women's ministry. I think you're reading into things that aren't there. Maybe you should rest more, pray more. This kind of suspicion isn't healthy." Elizabeth felt herself shrinking, the way she always did when he turned things around on her. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was being paranoid. But the hotel receipt in her purse felt like it was burning through the leather. They arrived at their Tribeca penthouse, 4,000 square feet overlooking the Hudson, purchased 3 years ago for $8.5 million in cash. A blessing from the Lord, Daniel had told the congregation. Daniel was out of the car before it fully stopped, already on another call, striding toward the entrance. Elizabeth followed more slowly, her heels clicking on the marble lobby floor. Inside the penthouse, everything was perfect. The custom Minotti furniture, the original Rothko on the wall, the La Cornue range in the kitchen that cost more than a luxury car. Joe Malone candles burned everywhere, peony and blush suede, Daniel's favorite. Everything beautiful, everything hollow. Daniel disappeared into his study and closed the door. Elizabeth stood in the middle of their perfect home and made a decision. She pulled out her laptop and opened a private browser. Private Investigator, New York City, Infidelity, Discreet. The results flooded her screen. She scrolled through reviews looking for someone who specialized in marital cases, someone who understood discretion. One name kept appearing, Sharon Mitchell, former NYPD detective, now private investigator. Reviews praised her thoroughness, her discretion, her compassion. Elizabeth's finger hovered over the phone number. Was she really doing this? Hiring someone to follow her husband? the senior pastor of one of the largest churches in the country, the man she loved more than anything. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Daniel's number. Can't wait for Friday night. Same hotel? I'll bring the champagne this time. Elizabeth dialed Sharon's number. Sharon Mitchell's office was in a nondescript building in Midtown, far from Grace Haven Church and anyone who might recognize the pastor's wife. She was a woman in her late 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that Elizabeth found oddly comforting. "Tell me everything," Sharon said, pulling out a legal pad. Elizabeth's hands shook as she slid the hotel receipt across the desk. Then she showed Sharon the screenshots of the text that had been sent to her number by mistake. Sharon studied them without expression. "How long have you suspected?" "Months, maybe a year. I kept making excuses." Elizabeth's voice cracked. "He's a pastor. Everyone loves him. Everyone thinks our marriage is perfect. I thought maybe I was going crazy." "You're not crazy, Mrs. Harper." Elizabeth looked up, her expression kind but firm. "And unfortunately, you're not the first wife to sit across from me with this exact story. Powerful men, especially religious leaders, often believe they're above the rules that apply to everyone else." "I just need to know the truth," Elizabeth whispered. "The truth has consequences. Are you prepared for what I might find?" Elizabeth thought about the hotel receipt, the texts, the way Daniel came home late smelling of perfume, the way he'd stopped touching her months ago. "I'm prepared," she said. Sharon's retainer was $5,000. Elizabeth paid with her personal credit card, one of the few things Daniel hadn't absorbed into their joint finances. "I'll need about a week," Sharon said. "Maybe less. Based on what you've shown me, your husband isn't being particularly careful." That night, Elizabeth lay awake beside Daniel, listening to him breathe. He'd come home late again, board meeting, he'd said, and gone straight to the shower. Now he slept peacefully, like a man with no secrets, no sins. Elizabeth wanted to shake him awake, to demand the truth, to scream until he admitted everything. Instead, she lay still and silent, counting the hours until Sharon called. The call came 5 days later. "I have what you need," Sharon said quietly. "Can you meet me this afternoon?" They met at the same office. Sharon slid a manila envelope across the desk. "I'm sorry," she said. Elizabeth's hands trembled as she opened it. The first photo showed Daniel entering the Carlisle Hotel at 9:30 p.m. last Thursday. The timestamp was clear. The second showed him in the lobby with a woman. She was young, maybe 28, with long dark hair and a red dress. Beautiful. Laughing at something Daniel was saying. The third photo made Elizabeth's stomach drop. Taken through a hotel window with a telephoto lens, Daniel and the woman kissing, his hand tangled in her hair, her body pressed against his. There were more photos, so many more, different hotels, different women, evidence spanning back months. Her name is Jessica Morales. She's a worship leader at Grace Haven Church, 29 years old. She's been seeing your husband for approximately 18 months. Jessica. Elizabeth saw her every Sunday, leading worship with her hands raised to heaven, her voice like an angel. "There are others," Sharon continued. "At least 2 more women I was able to identify, all connected to the church in some capacity. Staff members, volunteers. Based on credit card records, this has been going on for at least 3 years. 3 years. 3 years of lies." Elizabeth couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. "Mrs. Harper? Elizabeth?" Sharon's voice seemed to come from far away. "Do you need some water?" Elizabeth shook her head. "I need to go home. I need to talk to him." "Are you sure you want to confront him alone? These situations can become volatile." "He's my husband," Elizabeth said numbly. "I have to give him a chance to explain." She drove home in a daze, the envelope of photos on the passenger seat. Her mind kept trying to make sense of it, to find an explanation that would make this okay. But there was no explanation that could make this okay. Daniel was home when she arrived, working in his study as usual. Elizabeth stood in the doorway, the envelope in her hands. "We need to talk." She looked up, smiling. "Of course, honey, let me just finish this email." She threw the envelope on his desk. Photos spilled across his keyboard. Daniel's face went white. For a long moment, there was only silence. The hum of his computer, the distant sound of traffic below, Elizabeth's ragged breathing. "Elizabeth," Daniel finally said, his voice carefully controlled. "This isn't what it looks like." "Then what is it?" Her voice was shaking. "Tell me what it is, Daniel, because it looks like you've been having affairs with multiple women for years." He stood up slowly, his hands raised, like he was calming a frightened animal. Okay, yes, I've made some mistakes. But Elizabeth, please, you have to understand. Understand what? That you've been sleeping with half the church staff while preaching about faithfulness every Sunday? "I have a problem," the words burst out of him. "A sex addiction. It's a disease, Elizabeth. I've been struggling with this for years, trying to fight it on my own, but I need help, professional help. We can go to counseling together." "An addiction?" Elizabeth's laugh was bitter. "That's what you're calling it? An addiction that somehow only manifests in hotel rooms with women from our church? It's real." Daniel's voice rose. "Do you think I wanted this? Do you think I'm proud of this? I'm a man of God, Elizabeth. Do you know what it's like to struggle with this kind of temptation? To fight the enemy every single day?" "Don't you dare blame this on the enemy," Elizabeth was shouting now. "You made choices. You chose to betray me. You chose to lie to me every single day." "I never meant to hurt you." "But you did. You risked my health, my safety, my life. Did you even use protection with these women? Do you have any idea?" She couldn't finish. The thought of what he might have exposed her to made her physically ill. Daniel sank back into his chair, his head in his hands. "I'm sorry. God, Elizabeth, I'm so sorry. I'll do anything. I'll go to therapy, I'll confess to the board, I'll step down from ministry if that's what it takes. Just please don't leave me. I love you. I can't lose you." Elizabeth looked at this man she'd loved for 7 years, her husband, her pastor, her entire world. And she realized she didn't know him at all. "I need time," she whispered. "I can't think right now." Of course. Take all the time you need. I'll sleep in the guest room. I won't pressure you. Just please don't give up on us, on our marriage. We can survive this. With God, all things are possible." He was using scripture now, using God to manipulate her into staying. And the worst part was, it was working. Because Elizabeth loved him. Despite everything, she still loved him. "I'm going to Pastor Marcus. I need counsel." Daniel's face went carefully blank. "That's a good idea. Yes, Pastor Marcus will help us work through this." Have you hit that subscribe button yet? If you haven't, now would be a great time to do that, because this story is just getting started, and you don't want to miss other stories like this. Pastor Marcus's home office smelled like pipe tobacco and old books. He was in his 70s, a gentle man with kind eyes who'd mentored Daniel since his early days in ministry. Elizabeth had always trusted him. She sat across from him now, tears streaming down her face as she told him everything. The affairs, the photos, Daniel's confession. Pastor Marcus listened in silence, his expression grave. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "My dear girl," he finally said, "I cannot tell you how sorry I am. This is a terrible betrayal, a terrible sin." "What do I do?" Elizabeth whispered. "Everyone's telling me to pray, to forgive, to give him another chance, but I don't know if I can." "Marriage is sacred," Pastor Marcus said carefully, "a covenant before God. And yes, forgiveness is important. But Elizabeth, I need you to think very carefully about what you're considering. I haven't decided anything. If you leave Daniel, it won't just affect you too. Think about the church. 15,000 members who look to him for spiritual guidance, the television ministry reaching millions, the community programs serving thousands. If this becomes public, if you divorce him, all of that crumbles." Elizabeth stared at him. "Are you asking me to stay quiet, to protect the ministry?" "I'm asking you to think about the bigger picture. Your marriage isn't just about you and Daniel. It's about the kingdom of God, the souls that will be lost if Grace Haven falls apart, your testimony as a pastor's wife. My testimony? Elizabeth's voice rose. What about his testimony? What about the fact that he's been committing adultery for years? And he's confessed. He's repentant. He wants help. Pastor Marcus leaned forward. Elizabeth, I've known Daniel since he was a young man. He's made terrible mistakes, yes, but he's also done tremendous good. Think about all the people he's led to Christ, all the lives he's changed. Do you really want to destroy that over his human weaknesses? Elizabeth felt like she'd been slapped. Human weaknesses? He had affairs with multiple women. I'm not minimizing his sin, but I am asking you to consider forgiveness. Consider your vows, for better or worse, in sickness and in health. Sexual addiction is a sickness, Elizabeth. Daniel needs his wife to stand by him while he gets treatment. What about what I need? Pastor Marcus's expression softened. I know this is hard, but marriage requires sacrifice. Sometimes we have to lay down our own hurt, our own pain for the greater good. Pray about it, dear. Ask God what He would have you do. And remember, divorce should always be the absolute last resort. Elizabeth left his office feeling more confused than ever. Maybe Pastor Marcus was right. Maybe she was being selfish, thinking only of her own pain instead of the bigger picture. Maybe Daniel deserved a second chance. The next morning, there was a knock on her door. Elizabeth opened it to find 3 women standing in the hallway: Sister Patricia, Sister Ruth, and Sister Miriam, all pastors' wives, all wearing expressions of practiced sympathy. We heard, Sister Patricia said, pushing past Elizabeth into the living room, about Daniel's struggles. We wanted to come support you. They settled on her furniture like a tribunal, their designer handbags placed just so, their jewelry glinting. I know this must be so difficult, Sister Ruth began, taking Elizabeth's hand. But sweetheart, you need to know you're not alone. We've all been through this. Elizabeth blinked. What? My husband had an affair 5 years ago, Sister Patricia said matter-of-factly, with his secretary. It lasted 2 years before I found out. Mine too, Sister Miriam added, multiple affairs, one with a woman in our congregation. I even caught them together in his office. Elizabeth stared at them. And you stayed? Of course we stayed, Sister Ruth said, like it was obvious. We're pastors' wives, dear. Our marriages are different. More important, we have a higher calling. Men are different from us, Sister Patricia continued, her voice taking on a teaching tone. They have different needs, stronger sexual drives. It's biological. The enemy knows this and targets them specifically. That doesn't make it okay, Elizabeth started. No, of course not, Sister Miriam interrupted. But it does mean we have to be understanding, compassionate. These aren't just husbands, Elizabeth. They're men of God, doing spiritual warfare every day. Sometimes they stumble. Stumble? Elizabeth's voice was sharp. Daniel had affairs with multiple women for years. That's not stumbling. That's deliberately choosing to betray our marriage over and over again. The 3 women exchanged glances. You're angry, Sister Ruth said gently. That's natural, but you can't let anger cloud your judgment. Think about your vows, what you promised before God. What about Daniel promised? And he'll answer to God for that, Sister Patricia said firmly. But your responsibility is to be the Proverbs 31 wife, to support your husband, to cover his weaknesses in prayer. Cover his weaknesses? Elizabeth couldn't believe what she was hearing. You're asking me to hide this? To pretend it didn't happen? We're asking you to forgive, the way Christ forgives us. 70 times 7, remember? Leaving him won't solve anything. It'll just destroy everything you've built together. The ministry, your reputation, your future. Is that really what you want? What I want, Elizabeth said slowly, is a husband who's faithful to me. Sister Patricia's laugh was brittle. Oh, honey, if that's what you're waiting for, you're going to be disappointed. All men cheat. It's in their DNA. The only question is whether you're strong enough to rise above it or whether you're going to throw away your marriage over something every wife deals with. That's not true, isn't it? Sister Ruth leaned forward. Why do you think divorce rates are so high? Because women refuse to understand male nature. They expect their husbands to be perfect, and when they're not, they give up. I have a friend whose husband cheated, Sister Miriam said. She left him. You know what happened? He married the other woman and is happy now. My friend is alone, bitter, and lonely. She threw away 20 years of marriage over pride. This isn't about pride, Elizabeth protested. Then what is it about? Punishment? Making Daniel suffer for his mistakes? Sister Patricia's voice was sharp now. That's not very Christian, Elizabeth. They stayed for 2 hours, each taking turns telling Elizabeth stories of forgiveness, of women who'd stayed and been blessed, of marriages restored through prayer and fasting. You need to go on a 40-day fast, Sister Ruth said, as they prepared to leave. Pray for Daniel's deliverance. Spiritual warfare requires spiritual weapons. And stop being so cold to him, Sister Miriam added. A man needs warmth at home. If you push him away now, you're just driving him back into temptation. Remember, Sister Patricia at the door, God hates divorce. That's in the Bible. Whatever you're feeling right now, don't make a decision you'll regret for the rest of your life. After they left, Elizabeth sat in the silence of her perfect penthouse and felt more alone than ever. Maybe they were right. Maybe she was being prideful, unforgiving, unwilling to do the hard work of restoration. Maybe this was her cross to bear. Elizabeth looked at her wedding photo on the mantel, Daniel in his tuxedo, her in her Vera Wang, glowing with love and promise. She'd meant those vows, for better or worse, in sickness and in health. Maybe this was the worst. Maybe this was the test. Elizabeth got on her knees and began to pray. If you have gotten this far into this story, I'd love to know, what part of the world are you watching this video from? Do well to leave your reply in the comment section. Let's connect. For the next 6 weeks, Elizabeth became a ghost of herself. She prayed, she fasted, she read every Christian marriage book she could find. She attended a support group for pastors' wives dealing with marital challenges. Daniel went to therapy twice a week. He was attentive, apologetic, bringing her flowers and leaving love notes. He told her daily how sorry he was, how much he loved her, how he was fighting his demons with everything in him. I'm getting better, he told her one evening, holding her hands across the dinner table. Dr. Morrison says I'm making real progress. Thank you for standing by me, Elizabeth. I know I don't deserve it. Elizabeth wanted to believe him. She tried so hard to believe him. But then she found another hotel receipt, the Peninsula, last Tuesday night. When she confronted him, Daniel's eyes filled with tears. It was a relapse, just one moment of weakness. I'm so sorry, baby. The addiction is so strong, but I'm fighting it. I swear I'm fighting it. More prayers, more fasting, more tears. Elizabeth stopped eating regularly. She lost 15 pounds. Dark circles appeared under her eyes that no amount of makeup could hide. People at church started whispering, "Is Elizabeth okay? She looks so thin. I heard she's having a breakdown." Then Daniel's mother called. "Elizabeth, darling, I think we need to talk." Margaret Harper was a formidable woman. Old money, old power, old ideas about marriage and duty. She arrived at the penthouse in her Chanel suit and pearls, looking like she'd stepped out of a society page. "Daniel told me about your troubles," Margaret began, settling into Elizabeth's living room like a queen on a throne. "Did he tell you about his affairs?" Elizabeth asked bluntly. Margaret waved a hand dismissively. "Men straight, dear. It's unfortunate, but it happens. The question is how a wife handles it." Elizabeth's jaw tightened. "I'm handling it by trying to save my marriage." "Are you? Because from what Daniel tells me, you've been cold, distant, refusing his affections. Because he betrayed me. And he's apologized. He's in therapy. What more do you want?" Margaret's voice was sharp now. "You need to remember your place, Elizabeth. You're a pastor's wife. Your job is to support your husband, not tear him down." "I'm not tearing him down." "Really? Because making him sleep in the guest room, refusing to be intimate with him, that sounds like punishment to me, and it's pushing him right back into the arms of other women." Elizabeth felt like she'd been slapped. "You're blaming me for his affairs?" "I'm saying a man has needs. If his wife won't meet them, he'll find someone who will. That's just reality." "That's victim blaming." "Oh, don't give me that modern nonsense. Let me tell you something, Elizabeth. My husband cheated on me 3 times during our marriage, 3 times that I knew about. Did I leave him? No. Did I make a spectacle of myself? No. I understood that men are weak, that marriage is work, and that my duty was to my family." "Your duty?" Elizabeth's voice was rising. "What about love? What about faithfulness? What about your duty to give my son children?" Margaret cut her off. "You've been married 7 years, Elizabeth. 7 years and still no grandchildren. Maybe Daniel is looking elsewhere because his wife can't give him what he needs." The words hit like a physical blow. Elizabeth had been trying to get pregnant for 4 years. 4 years of fertility treatments, hormone injections, invasive tests. Every month brought hope, and then heartbreak. "That's not fair," Elizabeth whispered. "Fair? You want to talk about fair? My son built an empire. He gave you this penthouse, those clothes, that jewelry. He made you somebody. And this is how you repay him? By threatening to leave over a few indiscretions?" They weren't indiscretions. They were affairs, multiple affairs over years. Margaret stood up, smoothing her skirt. "You need to make a choice, Elizabeth. Either you commit to this marriage, really commit, not this half-hearted prayer and fasting nonsense, or you leave. But if you leave, don't expect a penny. I'll make sure Daniel's lawyers bury you." She walked to the door, then turned back. "One more thing. Have you considered that maybe Daniel is trying to have children? Maybe he's hoping one of these women can give him what you can't. Maybe he's just trying to cover your shame." After she left, Elizabeth sat frozen on her couch. "Maybe he's trying to cover your shame." The words echoed in her head, mixing with every doctor's appointment, every negative pregnancy test, every pitying look from church members asking when they'd start a family. Was Elizabeth right? Was this somehow Elizabeth's fault? She looked down at her hands, thin now, the Cartier bracelet loose on her wrist. When had she become so small? When had she started disappearing? Her phone buzzed. A text from Rachel, her best friend from college, the one Daniel had convinced her to distance herself from 3 years ago because she was too worldly. Elizabeth had been ignoring Rachel's calls for weeks. This time, she answered. "Elizabeth?" Rachel's voice was warm, concerned. "Oh my God, I've been so worried. Are you okay?" And just like that, Elizabeth started sobbing, great heaving sobs that came from somewhere deep inside, from a well of pain she'd been denying for months. "No," she gasped. "No, I'm not okay. Rachel, I need help. Please, I need help." "I'm coming," Rachel said immediately. "I'm getting in my car right now. Don't move. I'm coming." Rachel arrived all fierce love and righteous anger. She took one look at Elizabeth, gaunt, hollow-eyed, drowning in a designer sweatsuit that hung off her frame, and her face went pale. "Jesus Christ, Elizabeth, what has he done to you?" Elizabeth told her everything, the affairs, the addiction excuse, Pastor Marcus's counsel to think of the church, the pastors' wives and their stories of forgiveness, Margaret's accusation that this was somehow Elizabeth's fault for being barren. Rachel listened with increasing fury, her hands clenched into fists. "They're gaslighting you," she said when Elizabeth finished. "All of them. They're making you think this is normal, that you're the problem, that you should just accept being treated like garbage." "But maybe they're right," Elizabeth whispered. "Maybe I'm being selfish. Maybe marriage is supposed to be hard." "Hard, yes. Abusive? No." Rachel grabbed Elizabeth's hands. Listen to me. What Daniel is doing isn't a mistake or an addiction or a weakness. It's a choice. He chooses to cheat. He chooses to lie. He chooses to manipulate you into staying while he does whatever he wants. But he says he's getting help. He's lying. He's still cheating. You just showed me a hotel receipt from yesterday. Rachel's voice cracked. Elizabeth, you're starving yourself trying to pray away his betrayal. You're disappearing, and everyone around you is telling you to disappear more, to be smaller, to need less, to forgive more. When does it end? Elizabeth didn't have an answer. I'm not leaving you alone anymore, Rachel said firmly. I don't care what Daniel says. I'm staying here until you're okay. You can't. Watch me. For the next week, Rachel stayed. She made Elizabeth eat, made her sleep, made her see a doctor who was alarmed at her weight loss and prescribed vitamins and anti-anxiety medication. You're having a breakdown, the doctor said gently. The stress you're under isn't sustainable. But even with Rachel there, even with medication and food and sleep, Elizabeth couldn't let go. She loved Daniel. Despite everything, she still loved him. I can't just stop loving him, she told Rachel one night. I've loved him for 7 years. He's my husband, my partner, my best friend. He's not your best friend, Rachel said quietly. Best friends don't destroy you. Then came the call that changed everything. Elizabeth's phone rang at 2 a.m., an unknown number. Mrs. Harper, this is Dr. Chen from Presbyterian Hospital. Your husband was brought in by ambulance. He's collapsed. You need to come immediately. Elizabeth's heart stopped. What happened? He's stable, but we're running tests. Please come as soon as you can. Rachel drove her to the hospital. Elizabeth's mind was spinning with worst-case scenarios. Heart attack, stroke. What if he died? What if she lost him before they could fix things? Daniel was in a private room, looking pale and weak in a hospital gown. When he saw Elizabeth, tears filled his eyes. You came, he whispered. Of course I came. What happened? I don't know. I just collapsed during a late meeting. Everything went black. A doctor entered, young, professional, holding a tablet. Mrs. Harper, I'm Dr. Patel. I need to speak with you about your husband's test results. Something in the doctor's tone made Elizabeth's stomach drop. What is it? Dr. Patel glanced at Daniel, who'd gone very still. Mr. Harper, have you told your wife about your status? Status? Elizabeth looked between them. What status? Silence. Daniel, Dr. Patel said carefully, she needs to know. Know what? Elizabeth's voice rose. Someone tell me what's going on. Daniel's face crumbled. I'm HIV positive. The room tilted. Elizabeth grabbed the doorframe. You're what? I found out 6 months ago. I've been on medication, but the stress has been affecting my immune system. 6 months? Elizabeth's voice was shaking. You've known for 6 months and didn't tell me? We were intimate 2 months ago. You could have infected me. I was always careful. Careful? Elizabeth was screaming now. You've been having unprotected sex with multiple women, and you think you were careful? How long have you actually had this? How long have you been lying about this too? Dr. Patel interrupted gently. Elizabeth, we need to test you immediately. If exposure was recent, we can start preventative treatment. Oh my God. Elizabeth's knees gave out. Rachel caught her, held her up. Get away from me, Elizabeth said to Daniel, her voice deadly calm. I don't want you calling me. I don't want you texting me. Don't come home. I never want to see you again. Elizabeth, please. But she was already gone, Rachel supporting her as they walked out. The HIV test took 3 days to process. 3 days of Elizabeth barely breathing, barely sleeping, trapped in a nightmare. When the results came back negative, Elizabeth collapsed in relief. But the relief quickly turned to rage. She'd been lucky. She could have died because of Daniel's recklessness, but she'd been lucky. That afternoon, Rachel helped her pack everything: clothes, documents, jewelry, laptop, everything that was hers. "Where will you go?" Rachel asked. "A hotel for now. Then I'll find an apartment." Elizabeth's voice was steady now, determined. "I'm done, Rachel. I'm finally done." As they loaded suitcases into Rachel's car, Elizabeth's phone rang. Pastor Marcus. "I heard about Daniel's hospitalization. Elizabeth, I know this is difficult, but he needs you now more than ever. He's sick. He's struggling. This is when your marriage vows really matter, in sickness and in health." Elizabeth felt something inside her solidify into steel. "No," she said simply. "Elizabeth?" "I said no. I've prayed. I fasted. I've forgiven. I've stood by him through affair after affair. I've listened to everyone tell me to be smaller, quieter, more understanding. I'm done." "You're making a mistake." "The only mistake I made was staying as long as I did." Elizabeth's voice was calm. "And Pastor Marcus, you might want to start looking for a new senior pastor, because Daniel's secrets are about to become very public." She hung up. That evening, Elizabeth met with Sharon, the private investigator. "I need you to dig deeper. Financial records, everything. I want to know every secret Daniel's been hiding. That's going to be expensive. I don't care, whatever it costs." Sharon's investigation took 2 weeks. What she found was devastating. Daniel had been embezzling from Grace Haven Church for years, over $3 million, funneled through fake vendor accounts, money used for hotels, gifts for mistresses, payoffs to keep women quiet. But that wasn't the worst discovery. Sharon slid medical documents across the table. "I found this in archived records." Elizabeth read it, her vision blurring. Patient Daniel Harper. Date 8 years ago. Diagnosis azospermia, complete absence of sperm. Prognosis infertile, permanent condition. Recommended treatment NA, condition cannot be corrected. 8 years ago, before they were married. Elizabeth spent 4 years in fertility treatments, 4 years of hormone injections, invasive procedures, hope and heartbreak, 4 years of Daniel refusing to get tested because the problem is always with the woman, and Daniel had known the entire time. He was the infertile one. He let Elizabeth torture herself, let her believe she was broken, let everyone blame her for their childlessness, because he was too proud to admit the truth. Elizabeth sat in Sharon's office and felt the last piece of love she had for Daniel Harper turn to ash. Elizabeth called an emergency meeting with Grace Haven's board of directors. 20 men and women gathered in the conference room, looking uncomfortable. They knew something was wrong. Daniel had been on medical leave for 3 weeks. Elizabeth had moved out, and rumors were swirling. "Thank you for coming," Elizabeth said, standing at the head of the table. She looked different, stronger, clearer-eyed. "I have information about Pastor Harper that you need to see." She laid it all out. The affairs, documented with photos and hotel receipts. The embezzlement, proven with financial records. The HIV diagnosis he'd hidden. The infertility he'd blamed on her. The room was silent when she finished. Finally, Chairman Roberts spoke. "This is Elizabeth. These are serious accusations." "They're not accusations, they're facts, all documented, all provable." She slid Sharon's files across the table. "Daniel Harper has been defrauding this church and betraying his vows for years. He's put multiple people's health at risk. He's stolen millions from church funds, and he's lied to all of you about who he really is." "Even if this is true," one board member said, "don't you think airing this publicly will damage the church? Maybe we should handle this quietly." "Quietly?" Elizabeth's laugh was bitter. "You mean cover it up? Let him resign for health reasons and slink away while keeping his reputation intact, while the women he manipulated and the church he defrauded get nothing?" "Think of the ministry," another board member pleaded. 15,000 members. Think of what this will do to their faith. Think of what Daniel's been doing to their faith, Elizabeth shot back, standing before them every Sunday, preaching holiness while living in corruption. You want to protect the ministry? Then clean house. Remove the cancer before it kills everything. The vote was close, but Elizabeth had the evidence on her side. Daniel Harper was removed as senior pastor of Grace Haven Church immediately, pending investigation into the embezzlement charges. The media storm was immediate and brutal. Megachurch pastor removed. Affairs, embezzlement, HIV scandal. Daniel Harper fall from grace. Pastor's wife exposes years of deception. Elizabeth's phone rang constantly. She ignored it all, except one call. Elizabeth, Daniel's voice was broken. Please, I need to talk to you. I'm dying. The HIV, the stress, everything's gotten worse. I'm in the hospital again. Please, I'm begging you, just come see me one more time. Elizabeth stood in her new apartment, small, simple, hers, and felt nothing. No pity, no love, no obligation. No, she said quietly. Elizabeth, I'm dying. Then die. Die knowing that you destroyed everything good in your life. Die knowing that your lies caught up with you. Die knowing that I finally chose myself. She hung up. 6 months later, Daniel Harper died from complications related to AIDS. His immune system, weakened by stress and years of untreated infection, had finally given out. Elizabeth didn't go to the funeral. Instead, she sat in a coffee shop near her new apartment, working on her laptop. She'd started a blog, The Pastor's Wife, sharing her story, helping other women recognize spiritual abuse and manipulation. Her phone buzzed. An email from a publisher. They wanted to turn her blog into a book. Elizabeth smiled. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, silent, shrinking, starving herself to save a man who was destroying her. That woman was gone. In her place was someone who'd walked through fire and emerged stronger, someone who chose truth over comfort, someone who'd learned that sometimes the most faithful thing you can do is walk away. Her laptop chimed with a new comment on her blog. Thank you for sharing your story. I've been married to a pastor for 15 years and thought I was alone. Reading this gave me courage. I'm leaving him tomorrow. Thank you for showing me it's possible to survive. Elizabeth wiped her eyes and typed back. You're not alone. You never were. And yes, not only will you survive, you'll thrive. I promise. She closed her laptop and looked out the window at the city, busy, indifferent, filled with people living their lives. She was one of them now, just Elizabeth, not the pastor's wife, not Daniel Harper's victim, just herself, free. And that was enough. If you loved this story, I bet you'd love this next one. This next video will bring tears to your eyes and make you emotional. Click the video below to watch how a woman became a baby factory for a billionaire.